Do I hit the button here to start it?
I got it.
Okay. We've got a presentation here today to tell you about the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge and our friends group. First, what I'd like to do is let you know that we are a group of volunteers who support the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge. We're just citizen volunteers out there and interested in wildlife and support the refuge. But I'd like to, before I begin, just have a show of hands. Who's heard of the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge? Oh, okay. Wow, very good. Okay, well, that's good. Who has visited the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge? Oh, okay. Wow, about half the group. Well, that's actually very impressive. Are any of you people then bird watchers? Well, I only see one hand going up, but as I was walking in this morning, I saw a white-crowned sparrow in front of the building. So if you have ever seen a bird, you are actually a bird watcher. So let's see, how many people are bird watchers? Okay, good. Well, when we're done with this talk, I hope that it encourages you to come down to Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge and watch some more birds. So let me begin here. On the slide, we have our website. That is for our organization. The Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, those of you who have been there, but what do we support? Well, it helps to explain what a National Wildlife Refuge is. The first of the National Wildlife Refuges was established in 1903 by that great conservationist president, Teddy Roosevelt. It began with a 3-acre island in Florida called Pelican Island, and the reason it was established was because in the turn of the century, it was very popular for women to wear big hats full of bird plumes and actual birds on their hats. And it got to the point where it was actually decimating egrets, pelicans, herons, and things like that. And Teddy Roosevelt recognized they needed to start doing something, so he started with one refuge of 3 acres. Today, there are approximately 570 refuges that have about 95 million acres protected and another 500 million acres of marine refuges that are protected. So it's actually quite an extensive system. It is separate from the national park system, which people are familiar with, like Yosemite. It is separate from the United States Forest Service, which concentrates on forestry. And of course, there's the Bureau of Land Management that manages all the other federal lands. The Fish and Wildlife Service National Wildlife Refuges is specifically for the management of wildlife. So that is what the difference is. So where is Stone Lakes? Those of you who have been there know where it is. I like to say it's 10 miles from the capital as the sandhill crane flies. Directly south on this slide, you see where the star is. That's where our headquarters are, 1624 Hood Franklin Road. It was established in 1992, and it was specifically to protect the Central Valley habitat. There are grasslands, there are permanent and temporary wetlands, there is oak and riparian forest, there is sloughs. And the reason it was established, as you can see, Elk Grove is just to the east and north, and as the area was rapidly urbanizing back in the 80s, it was determined that there was a need to protect some habitat before it was all covered over. The picture there shows what are called the project boundaries. So that's the total area within which the refuge could be established. Of about 19,000 acres. At the present time, there are about 6,500 acres under active management. For it to be included in the refuge, it's a willing seller, willing buyer situation. So the government doesn't go out and take land. It's when people come forward with land or they have land for sale. Of the 6,500 acres, about 1/3 is actually owned by the federal government. About 1/3 is under conservation easements, where people have had a conservation easement so they can use the land, for example, for grazing, as well as for wildlife purposes. And about 1/3 is under joint management with other agencies. So there's about 6,500 acres. You also see it's part of a larger complex of refuges. To the southeast is what's called the Cosumnes Preserve. That's a multi-agency managed preserve. To the northwest is the Vic Fazio Yolo Basin Wildlife Area. That's actually as you go across the west of West Sacramento, you go across towards Davis, you see it down there. So it's one of a series of refuges. Oops, too fast. There we go. This picture shows you the extent of the national wildlife refuges in the United States. As I said, there are about 570 of them. It was, Stone Lakes was the 505th established. These refuges are funded by the federal government through federal appropriations as part of the federal budget. But one thing that is somewhat unique and distinctive with these refuges is all hunters must buy a duck stamp. And the monies from the duck stamp goes, 98% of it goes towards the acquisition of wetlands and other habitat. So it's supported, it's got a considerable amount of support from the hunting community. The other thing that the Fish and Wildlife Service does, in addition to manage all these refuges, is if you've heard of the Endangered Species Act, they are responsible for determining which species are listed and protected under the Endangered Species Act. And then some of their activity is then to determine how to protect those species in the refuges and beyond. So the Fish and Wildlife Service doesn't just manage refuges, it also evaluates species for the Endangered Species Act. This picture is a picture that shows the waterfowl flyways through the United States. The reason I put this in here is if you think back to the last picture with the refuges, you'll see many of these refuges are on these flyways, including our refuge, which is designated by the, I think it's a sandhill crane there on the left, a black sandhill crane. The reason this is important is some of the birds in Stone Lakes actually winter in Stone Lakes and fly north as far as Alaska to breed. Specifically, the lesser sandhill crane, which has been, there has been one that was identified to be tagged in Homer, Alaska, and observed on our refuge. Other birds come from the south, like the Swainson's hawk, which is a raptor. It winters in South America. It will come up to the refuge in the summer and breeds and relies upon the grasslands for hunting. So up and down these flyways, birds come and go, and that's why you need so many refuges, is because birds are mobile. So the Stone Lakes, what we say is it's wild lands for wildlife. There is wildlife conservation, but it's also important for habitat restoration, wildlife observation opportunities. So many photographers come out to photograph, and of course interpretation. And waterfowl hunting. Stone Lakes and many refuges actually have a hunting program because, as I said, duck stamps support the acquisition of the wetlands, and so hunting is an important component for the refuge. Our hunting program is I think already over for the year, somewhat abbreviated this year because, as you recall, last year with all the floods, the entire southern part of the refuge flooded, and it literally flooded out all of the blinds and everything for the hunting program, but it is still going on.
I was just curious, you said the money goes to buying wetlands. Who do you buy it from?
Willing seller, willing buyer. So willing seller, willing buyer. So if somebody has land and they're willing to sell it, that's how it's acquired.
What's wetlands? I mean, that's...
Wetland, well, there's
any land that somebody would sell to you? It doesn't have to be a specific kind of land.
Well, it has to have a biological value, for example. So as you're driving down I-5, if you notice, you look out to the either side, there are areas that you can see are either permanent or temporary wetlands. You'll see water sometimes in the winter. You don't see it in the summer. Otherwise, you see it year-round. Specifically in Stone Lakes, if you look to the west as you're going down there, you'll see the wetlands in there. But again, it's for willing seller, willing buyer. It's if somebody has it. And the other way that land gets acquired is there are mitigation obligations for development, and some of those mitigation obligations then are transferred to the federal government for permanent management. So that's some of the ways they can have it. And lastly, one of the purposes of the wildlife refuges are public education. So what can you see if you go to Stone Lakes? Well, this is one of the iconic birds, obviously, of the Central Valley, Stone Lakes, and that is the sandhill crane. There are two subspecies of sandhill crane you can see, what's called the lesser sandhill crane and the greater sandhill crane. The size range is from 41 to 48 inches, so a small greater is probably smaller than a large lesser, and when you're out there, telling the difference between them is really difficult. But they're magnificent birds, as much as 4 feet tall. Interestingly, the lesser is the one that migrates all the way to Alaska to breed, whereas the greater breeds in northeastern Oregon, southern Washington, and in that area. Sandhill cranes are actually not unique to the Central Valley. They are all through the United States, and the largest flyway actually goes through up from Texas up through the Midwest, particularly in Nebraska. There's an area called the Platte River that is well known for its sandhill cranes, and then on up into the Arctic. So I keep talking about waterfowl. So there are these are some of the waterfowl that you can see out there. And however, there are actually 213 species of birds that have been observed, probably more. That's just what we have listed recently that have been observed on the refuge. 83 of those are breeding birds. So there's 83 species that breed there. 14 mammals have been identified, 8 reptiles, and 2 amphibians. So it's not just birds in wildlife refuges. It encompasses the entire suite of wildlife. The numbers can be spectacular. This is snow geese. I think this picture was taken by Gene Cunningham, our web guru and our photographer, and I forgot to introduce Gene when I began, and Dale Claypool. Dale Claypool is the president of our board here, and Gene has taken most of these fabulous pictures that are in this presentation. But down on the refuge, I don't know how many thousand snow geese have been identified at one time, but it's in the thousands, and you can go down there, and the field almost looks like it's white with snow. There are so many snow geese. In addition to snow geese, of course, there's the Canada geese, and there's also the white-fronted goose that you can see. One of the purposes of the refuge is to ensure that there are places for some of the species that have been identified either through state law or federal law as endangered or threatened. Everybody's probably heard of the fairy shrimp. There are vernal pools at Stone Lakes that where the federally endangered fairy shrimp occupies. I've mentioned the Swainson's hawk in California because of the decreasing amount of grasslands, increasing urbanization. It's a species of what's called special concern, but it is found down at Stone Lakes. The western burrowing owl, those of you who are familiar with owls, the burrowing owl is an interesting one because it is a ground nester. And again, it is, its habitat is declining with more development, so it is considered to be special concern. And then the long-billed curlew, which actually is another, people talk about shorebirds, but shorebirds are not always found by the shore. In this case, they're found in fields for the winter, and it actually flies up to the Arctic to breed in the summer. So what is there at Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge? What facilities are there? Well, the Blue Heron Trail is our publicly accessible trail that is open dawn to dusk, no charge. There's a parking area and a bathroom area that people are welcome to come and walk through at your leisure. It's about a mile of handicapped accessible. It is paved, so it's handicapped accessible, and you're welcome to come at any time. It has informational kiosks such as this that are keyed into various environmental issues, and it also has some information by Bee the biologist, who is a character that is keyed into some of the children's environmental education topics. So if you have grandchildren or anybody you want to take, it's a great place to take the grandkids too. There is no water there, so if you go take water, take a hat. There's very little shade because it's pretty much out in the grasslands. And I say it's best from October to May. Middle of summer is probably not the best time to be out there. It gets a little hot, and frankly, there just aren't a lot of birds moving around. So but this time of year is probably approaching the end of the peak. Good time of year. The sandhill cranes are starting to leave. Some of the birds are starting to move around, but there's still plenty to see. One point I do want to make, don't know if it affect anybody here, but no dogs. I'm a dog owner. I love to take my dog everywhere, but you can't take them on wildlife refuges for obvious reasons, right? They chase wildlife, and it's so, leave your dog at home, you know, it's just one of those things, unfortunately. But also out at Stone Lakes, and I should mention 1624 Hood Franklin Road, on that first slide where there was a picture of the star, that's where the Blue Heron Trails is, if I didn't make that clear. Also there is what's called Little Green Heron Playscape, and this was designed to be a interactive environmental play area, particularly for younger people, for kids to bring in, to introduce them to the environment there. It kind of suffered from the drought. It's currently we're looking at ways to rehabilitate it, but it got hammered by the drought. So a lot of the stuff that got planted there didn't make it through the drought. So we're looking at rehabilitating that. But it's still an area, if you have a young children, you can walk through. Okay, so that's Stone Lakes. Who are we? We're the Friends of Stone Lakes. As I said, what we are is we're all volunteers, and we're dedicated to support the refuge, to promote it, and to protect it. So what I've done here is listed some of our activities and what we do. First is we manage endowment funds. It's a bit of a unique duty, but some of the lands which were provided to the federal government came with an endowment to manage, to fund some of the management. The federal government actually can't manage endowments, trust funds itself. So they needed a private entity, so we do that. There's about $3 million that we manage, and the revenues from that are all dedicated towards the management of the refuge. We assist with environmental education programs. We fund through a program called Ride to the Refuge with the Elk Grove School District, school children coming out to the refuge and engaging in environmental education activities out there. We also sponsor a competition, or we don't sponsor it, we support it. It's actually run by the State Department of Fish and Game. It's called Nature Bowl, and it's a competition amongst school kids that come out and have various environmental competitions, such as naming different types of animals and engaging in different activities out there. It's a statewide competition that is engaged throughout statewide, so we support that. And then finally, we offer a scholarship every year to a graduate of the Elk Grove Unified School District through the Elk Grove Schools Foundation for a college senior who's going on to study in environmental topics. So we're trying to, through education, inform people. We do outreach such as this. I call Stone Lakes a natural gem that's hidden in plain sight. It's surprising how many people in Sacramento have never heard of it. And even when we go to the Lodi Crane Festival, which is in November, we go to the Galt Winter Bird Festival, which was last month, and the Elk Grove Pumpkin Festival, to let people know it's there, and many people just are not aware of it. It's surprising, but through that we're trying to get people aware of it, because if they're not aware of it, they won't appreciate it, and if they don't appreciate it, they won't value it continuing to be there. So we engage in fundraising and advocacy to support the refuge. Specifically, for example, because we are private, we can talk with elected representatives to ask them to support the refuge. Federal employees obviously are not allowed to do that kind of stuff, so they can't do that, but we can to go to our elected representatives and ask them to support it. And then we advocate to protect the environmental resources out there. These are just the pictures of how the endowment managed.
You had a question.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I've come up from the south on I-5, and I see these lakes along I-5, and I often wonder, I wonder if they're part of the refuge. And I'm just curious, you talked about this mile pathway that you could walk. Did those go next to those lakes at all?
It goes through a wetland area and through and near a wetland area. Not those lakes. I think I know what you're talking about. The refuge headquarters of 1624 is actually a little bit off of I-5, to the west of I-5. Okay. Yeah. But there's no paths that I'm aware of right by those lakes.
Are those part of the refuge?
A couple of them are, some of them aren't. It depends on which ones. Some of them may actually be Casumnes, depending on where where you are on I-5.
Okay, thank you.
So anyway, this picture just shows that the endowment supports habitat maintenance. Sacramento Tree Foundation has come out and done work there. School groups have done work there. I think Boy Scout groups. If you're aware of any group who would be interested in doing that, I'd say contact the refuge management, and they will help coordinate that. We obviously work closely with the staff of the Wildlife Refuge. On the left is B. Triderer. She was the assistant manager, and she is terrifying some young children with a venomous western rattlesnake. Actually, no, that's a gopher snake. It's not venomous. Kids love this stuff. I mean, kids just love it. And on the right shows our display as that we take out to activities. As I mentioned, we have public education at the Blue Heron Trail. There is a amphitheater area, and this is where the public education takes place. These are just pictures of the Nature Bowl competition. You can see in the upper left-hand corner is a child holding up a poster of some environmental topic that they all had to prepare. And in the lower left, everybody gets a participation medal. Kids love it, you know. In this day and age, kids spend so much time on screens, they don't spend enough time out in nature. So one of the things we try and do is give them an opportunity to put the screens away and to come out in nature. You know, there's the whole talk about the nature deficit syndrome. We think it's important at a young age for the kids to connect and appreciate what is there in a way that they don't necessarily get on a day-to-day basis. This just shows some pictures of our public outreach. We will be participating in what's called Walk on the Wild Side. It comes up on May 18th. We reach a number of people, and we invite people to join us. We are a volunteer group, so we always invite people to join us. One of the activities that we offer, and the refuge does offer, is wildlife walks. Because it is a refuge and not a park, it is largely not accessible to the public. The purpose being, it's to allow the birds to have the opportunity, particularly in the winter, to recharge before they go off in the breeding. But once or twice a month during the winters, from about October, November through, I think, last one's in March, there's an offer of a docent-led walk which gets you out into a part of the refuge that is otherwise closed. There is one coming up on this Saturday at 9 o'clock.
Yeah, right.
9 o'clock at Blue Heron Trails, the parking lot there. 9 o'clock, you don't have to register in advance, there's no charge, you can just show up and I think it's being led by Ray, the volunteer from the refuge. And
You mentioned that Ray is always very prompt. And if you're not
Okay.
there by 9,
Do you have information on the upcoming Saturday?
It's on our website, and our website, I think, is on the flyer you
Yeah.
have there. I'll make sure everybody gets one before you leave.
so in the summer, there are the opportunity for kayak trips on the slough. On the west side of the refuge is a large slough area. It's hydrologically connected to the Sacramento River and the Delta. If you're familiar with the history of Sacramento, there actually was a railway that went from Sacramento down to Elk Grove, and it's called the SP Cut, where they actually dredged out to build the railway embankment. And now it's filled in with water, and that area is actually a wetland, a permanent wetland, where in summer they conduct kayak trips. Place is a little bit like the Louisiana swamps, actually. It's kind of interesting. You wouldn't think it. The Delta is really an interesting place. So those are some of the public accessible opportunities that we have. We sponsor an open house every year in November. It's called Brunch with the Birds. We publicize it, and it's usually the first or second weekend in November. It's an open house. We invite the public to come out and join us for brunch, and then we do a walk. It's our annual open house. If you follow our website, we'll announce it, and it's coming up. So it's called Brunch with the Birds. And then finally, the next event is Walk on the Wild Side, which I mentioned earlier, on May 18th. Walk on the Wild Side is actually, we support it, but we don't run it. I think it's actually run through the Sacramento Regional Sanitation District, if I'm not mistaken, Dale, about that. Sacramento Regional, it's just south of the Freeport, you know where Freeport is, and it's in the woods there. Beautiful little activity. We'll be there. There will be a lot of environmental groups. There are walks that are offered there, and it's on May 18th. It's really a nice little event if you can make that. And then finally, what I mentioned is we advocate for the refuge. So as everybody who has lived in Sacramento for any period of time, you know, I'm a relative newcomer, I've only been here about 35 years, knows it has developed incredibly fast. So one of our purposes is to ensure that as development occurs, the refuge is protected. So we are able to actively express our concerns and about protection from adjacent urbanization. In Elk Grove, of course, everything flows from east to west towards the river, downhill. You wouldn't think of it, but it actually is downhill from Elk Grove to the river. So all, you know, urban water runoff, we watch that, and we're concerned about that to make sure that the water quality is maintained in the refuge. We've been very active in monitoring the Delta conveyance project called the tunnels. You've probably heard about the tunnels that are conveying water from north to south. The water issue isn't particularly our issue, but our issue is the fact that this project is directly adjacent to the refuge and it runs under part of the refuge. So we have been involved in expressing our concerns about any impacts on the refuge. Particularly one of them was, at one point they were proposing another huge power line to go right across through the refuge. And I think we've gotten that to be undergrounded so that the birds don't run into it. There's already a large power line. So we've been active in environmental issues on support of the refuge. And then obviously we're always advocating for financial support through the federal government for the refuge. So that's an overview of the Stone Lakes National Wildlife Refuge, an overview of our group, what we do, And some people have already asked questions, but if anybody else has any other questions, we're happy to take them.
Couple of questions. One, the flyways. So are those mainly busy with birds during the spring and the fall migrations, or are they busy all year long?
They're primarily migration routes. Yeah.
So spring and fall?
Yeah, spring and fall are the most active times, yeah.
And then you mentioned there were 8 or 9 mammals. What mammals are there?
I think there's 14 mammals. Coyote, bobcat. I tell you what, I can tell you because I've got the list here. Yeah, Sasquatch, yeah. Okay, black-tailed deer, possum, Virginia opossum, jackrabbit, of course, squirrels, western gray in California, ground squirrel, beaver, voles, muskrat, coyote, raccoon, striped skunk, river otter, mink, and gray fox. So
I was there for the birds brunch and didn't see any mammals, but maybe if I came out early, like at dawn or dusk.
most mammals are not out in the middle of the day. We had a walk here 2 weeks ago and we saw a coyote out in the field. So, occasionally see a coyote. River otters are tough to see, unless you happen to see them in one of the canals. What you'll find is their slides. You oftentimes see where they've slid across. There's places where you say, well, this is where they're crossing, or you can, their scat is very distinctive, of what it has in it. So you'll see that they are there.
Mussel shells.
Right, exactly. So you'll see they're there, but you just get lucky to see them. Things like bulls, ground squirrels are pretty easy to see. Beaver, a little less uncommon. They're more crepuscular than diurnal. So, it's like the birds to a certain extent. You know what? They're live. They move.
Yeah.
Here today, gone tomorrow. You can sit for a while and see something. You can sit and see nothing. So you never know.
One more question. So the hunters, are they allowed to hunt birds on the refuge?
There's one unit that is the area that hunting is allowed. It is all obviously strictly controlled and overseen by the refuge. It's not anybody can come in and hunt at any time. You have to register, and there are certain blinds and certain areas that they're allowed to hunt in, and only on certain days. So hunting is allowed, but it's very closely controlled and obvious. Every hunter has to comply with all of the game laws.
Do people ever dump things there that shouldn't be there?
Oh yeah, of course they do.
I mean,
Yeah,
things
it's a-
like baby alligators.
Oh, you mean like wild?
Yes, yes.
I thought you were talking about garbage. Yeah. Dumping of garbage is a problem everywhere.
Periodically you see stories,
Yeah.
not necessarily here, like maybe in Florida or places like that, where people get them as pets and then can't handle them for leaving.
I suppose it's happened, but not that I'm particularly aware of. The only thing I can think of is maybe the western pond, or not the western pond, the painted turtle. Painted turtles are non-native. People might dump them, but I can't think of it. I thought you were talking about.
Sliders.
What's that?
Are not-
Red-eared sliders, that's
Yeah.
it. Yeah, red-eared sliders are non-natives, but I don't know. We've never seen an alligator. So people do dump garbage, and unfortunately, there has been 1 or 2 pot farms found because some of the areas are somewhat isolated. So part of the reason that the refuge isn't open to the public is because, honestly, a lot of times, a lot of the public isn't that respectful of the refuge. So, they have to be careful about allowing people in so that, they don't end up with greater problems. Was there a question over here somewhere?
I have a question.
Ah,
It was published in the local newspaper relatively recently that there was a person, maybe it was you, who was offering a tour of the area for bird watching. Was that you?
we have conducted dose and lead tours, and the refuge does
Yeah,
tours.
well, he was inviting people, a group of people, anyone who wanted to come. So do they give programs of tours of various parts of this, identifying the birds and so forth?
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Was that you that put
Well-
that article in the paper?
I don't know what an article in the paper.
It was published in the local pocket news.
I don't know, but the Refuge does offer tours. Maybe somebody picked it up off the website and put something in there.
This would be, all the events would be on the website, wouldn't they?
Right.
Yeah.
So, on this last slide, the top website is our website. The bottom website, the bottom website is the Fish and Wildlife Service
All
website.
of that information is on this flyer, if you want to take one of these before you leave.
Yeah, so,
Yeah.
I think the sanitation district that you mentioned, they have like something called the buffer lands or something. Is that adjacent to this, and is there any connection between the two?
yeah, the buffer lands, actually, if, maybe I can go back. Can I go back on this to?
Yeah.
Okay, let me see if, I'm going to go back to the very beginning that shows the map. Oop, too far. Okay, there we go. So you see this map, up at the north end, there's kind of a hook.
Here.
Yeah.
That's the buffer lands for the,
So here's I-5 coming down. On the right-hand side is Stone Lakes. At the very top, Scott was saying, are the buffer lands. This is where the waste treatment plant is as well. So it's the buffer between the waste treatment plant and the communities.
But it's also part of Stone Lake.
Yes,
It-
it's part of that.
it's within the project area, but it's not actually owned by Stone Lakes, but it serves the same purpose because it's the buffer lands. And there's a lot of active management communication between the regional SAN and the staff. Because,
And for those of you who are interested in bird watching, both the buffer lands and Cosumnes River Preserve also have bird watch.
If we, as a social club of Asian Community Center, decided that, I think this would be a fabulous field trip for our group. And so, who would we have, the person to, who would we contact to make the reservations and to make the arrangements and to find out what's expected of our group and everything?
what do we have on that flyer there, Gene?
Which,
In terms of contact information?
well, we have the Refuge website and the Friends website, and either one of those would get you going in the right direction.
Yeah, you can hit the Friends website. I think there's an email address there, which on the Friends website that you could, if you had a time, hit that email address and ask and indicate what your interest is, and somebody will respond.
Is there like an outreach person or community?
Well, no, we are it. So it would be one of us. Yeah, that's why I say it would be one of us. But I think it's info@stonelakes.org or something like that.
That's our,
Is
well, no, yeah, www.info@stonelakes.org.
yeah.
Now I gotta look.
I would like to
Oh,
have that
it's-
information and
Yeah, it's,
who we would contact.
well, these are the contacts right here. This would be the,
Well, you can.
the refuge information. This is our site.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Feel-
our, excuse me, our email address is not on here, but if you wanted to copy it down, it's habitat@friendsofstonelakes.org.
Oh, Habitat. Okay, I thought it was info. Yeah, but if
It
you.
used to be.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Here, I'll write it down for you.
So it's on our website, and if you send a note to that email, somebody will pick it up and
Not somebody
respond.
being me.
But you will probably refer it on to one of us to contact you to set it up.
Maybe this is out of date, because this says info@friendsofstonelake.org. Is that out of date?
Yes, that is out of date, sorry.
What did you say it's called now?
It's habitat at friendsofstonelakes.org.
So it looks like the hook that you're talking about, the buffer lands, that's got the 2 lakes, so those are the lakes I probably.
Those may be the lakes you're seeing.
Okay, and they do tours also that are maybe separate, like,
Oh, it's a separate entity, and yeah, they do tours.
They do some in the evening sometimes too, it's kind of interesting.
okay.
I think, Dale, you've been on one of their tours and you got it off the website, on
Yeah, on their website.
their website. So, if you look on their website.
Pardon?
The lake, what city is that?
Scott was mentioning right up here, that's the buffer lands.
Right.
Oh, that's part of the Buffalo
Yeah,
Lake?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
And one of them's Beach Lake, I don't know, what is the other one?
The Sacramento Regional is the one that helps sponsor Walk on the Wild Side on May 18th. And I'm sure they'll be there and have information, about any of the activities. Okay. Oh,
That little fairy shrimp you showed, how big is that thing?
well, oh yeah, it's very small. I suspect it is somewhere between about a half an inch. Yeah. Yeah, fairy shrimp are interesting. They live in what are called vernal pools. Vernal pools are ephemeral. So in other words, during the winter, when it rains and it gets wet, they'll fill up and they'll become pools. They completely dry up in the summer because there's no rain. The fairy shrimp actually lives and breeds in that, and it can only breed during it's wet. But when it's dry, they actually, I don't want to say hibernate, but they actually are under the ground, and they are waiting for it to become wet again, and then they will breed in the vernal pools. And the reason they're threatened is because so many vernal pools have been destroyed throughout the Central Valley for development.
Right.
Something like 90% of the wetlands in the Central Valley are gone. So, there's just very few places that they breed anymore.
Is that delta tunnel going to affect vernal pools more?
Actually, probably not affect vernal pools as much as overall hydrological conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
That's kind of a silly question, but do Canadian geese migrate now, or are they living year-round in the Central Valley?
Canadian geese are an interesting issue. There are actually about 6 different species of Canadian geese, from the smallest, which are Aleutian, all the way up to the, I think it's called greater. But, a lot of them have become sedentary now because it is so, the living's good, right? So the stuff you see in the parks and things like that are sedentary, but there are some that still migrate. Yeah, for example, the Aleutian, the cackling, and some of those. The Aleutian is a small Canadian goose that was recently recognized as being a separate species. It's called Aleutian because it breeds out in the Aleutians, and it's a very small population. And cackling, if you've heard geese, you hear a honking of a goose. A cackling Canadian goose doesn't sound anything like a honking Canadian goose, and they recognized that, why is that bird sounding so much different? Well, they discovered it's actually a separate species, even though they look very similar to the others. So, yeah, but Canadian geese, a lot of parks, they're just kind of a mess.
So if you take an old jelly jar, clean off the label, you can actually dip it in the water at the vernal pools, and you can see little things floating around. It magnifies it enough where you can see them, if you don't have a fancy microscope.
Good tip.
I just saw something on the news. They found a whole bunch of peacocks in Fairfield. Where do peacocks come from?
People's yards.
Where do they come from? They
Originally?
They weren't always there.
Oh no, they're non-native. What's that?
They were brought over as ornamentals.
Yeah, there's a number of birds which are non-native.
Well, a lot of them are wild. I mean, I live near Gibson Ranch up in the Antelope area, and it's teeming with peacocks. And, how they got there, who knows? But
Well,
They're quite happy.
they got there because somebody brought them in as an ornamental for their property, and they escaped.
They flew away.
Yeah, yeah.
Wetland bird then.
No,
I think they originally come from India.
I think so.
Yeah, they're originally
India.
Indian. But there's a number of non-native species. One that actually is increasing now, and people say, oh, that's wonderful, isn't that pretty, is the mute swan. The mute swan is non-native. It is, there's the tundra swan and the whistling swan, and a very rare swan called a whooper swan that is very rarely seen. But the mute swan is the one you see in all the parks. People see in the parks. It's a white swan. It's got a little bit of orange on its bill. But it's non-native, and actually it's a very aggressive bird, and it's of concern because what happens when the non-natives come in, they drive out the natives. So they're very aggressive in their breeding, and they add some color, but they're not necessarily a good thing to see.
Are they native?
Oh yeah, trumpeters and trumpeter swan and tundras are both native. So there's a number of non-native birds that show up.
What do birds eat in this refuge?
Well, there's most of them are dabblers. They're eating a lot of the waterfowl are eating a lot of the algae and grasses and stuff that grows in the wetlands. Shorebirds and things like that are eating a lot of the little invertebrates and worms and little invertebrates. They got the long bills that you see them sewing machine in and out. They're looking for stuff in the mud, like little invertebrates. But whenever you see a duck with its butt up, butts up, and its head, it's eating the grasses and the algae. And of course, many birds eat insects. There are plenty of insects out there. So some birds eat insects. And of course they're,
Cranes, which eat anything.
what's that?
Then you have the cranes, which eat anything.
Right, they'll eat bugs and amphibians.
Nails,
Yeah, snails, amphibians, little fish. A crane like a great blue heron. They'll eat fish or frogs. And of course then there's the raptors, which eat other birds.
There's no farming there where there's grain and stuff like that, right?
Not right on the refuge that I'm aware of. There's grazing, but there is farming in the adjacent lands that sandhill cranes in particular will feed on.
North of us, they have the rice
field,
fields.
the agricultural field that's right next to the refuge, what do they grow?
They change.
Oh, okay. They
It's
rotate
plowed
their
now,
crops. Very
it's
good.
plowed now, and I'm not sure what they're going to.
Yeah.
But
There's
I've seen
corn.
huge flocks of geese out there in their fields, so I'm not sure what they're eating, but they like it, whatever it is.
Yeah. I mentioned Platte River in Nebraska, which is a huge area where the sandhill cranes accumulate in spring. And the reason they're there is the Platte River provides safe roosting for them. But of course, what's Nebraska grow? Corn. So the fields are just full of corn. And they're feeding on the corn, so they will feed in agricultural areas and pick up whatever's left in the fields, as well as insects and they're opportunistic feeders. Any other questions? Okay.
Great, thank you.
Well, thank you for coming. Yeah, thank you for coming.
That was a good response.
Yeah, good.